We know that Mike Tomlin sets quite the floor for the Pittsburgh Steelers. What type of ceiling does this roster have? We'll break that down for you today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Krabs from Locked On Dolphins. And we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to issue a big thank you, shout out, and welcome to our everydayers. Those of you who never miss a single episode, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins.
Joe, happy Wednesday to you.
Thank you.
And we are halfway through the AFC North with our roster assessment series, and was hoping we were going to get a little clarity on if the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to have a new quarterback for today's show. The nice thing is we don't really talk about quarterbacks relative to the rest of the roster with this exercise.
Yeah, that's helpful. It's either Mason Rudolph, Kirk Cousins, or Aaron Rodgers, right?
Unless Will Howard wins the job.
Okay, sure. Well, I mean, there's also a playoff experienced quarterback in Skylar Thompson on this roster that we cannot quick. You want to talk about just postseason experience between Thompson, Rudolph, and Howard, man. These guys have been in big games.
Will Howard just played in the playoffs this past year.
That's what I'm saying, man. What other teams got this type of playoff experience in their quarterback depth chart?
All right. Now, before we get too far off the rails, was also interested to see if we were going to get any formal movement on this. Adam Schefter, he loves me not. Jonnu Smith, Pittsburgh trade rumor thing.
Agents got Schefter's ear on this. You know, they're letting us know every other day that's still alive or not. You know,
came out on Thursday from Schefter that the Steelers had engaged in talks with the Dolphins about Jonnu Smith, who, of course, Pittsburgh's offensive coordinator is Arthur Smith, and very long, illustrious track record of Arthur Smith loving Jonnu Smith as a football player. Then Adam said on Monday that they weren't expected to trade for Jonnu Smith, and then just 24 hours later came out and said the Steelers have re-engaged the Dolphins about Jonnu Smith, and then it came out that Parham tore his ACL yesterday at practice, which is a big-time bummer for Pittsburgh. These May and June injuries are a big-time gut punch.
Yeah, I think Parham missed all of last year too, which is not great for him. Have we? Has anybody stopped and asked the question? Does the Pittsburgh Steelers need Jonnu Smith? Like they have Pat Freiermuth and Darnell Washington. To me, they need more help at wide receiver. Is this just about Jonnu Smith trying to leverage Arthur Smith in that relationship, and the fact that the Steelers do need some playmakers against just getting the extension that he wants in Miami? Has anybody considered that?
From what I understand, is there is some genuine interest from Pittsburgh to add. They want another offensive pass game weapon. Okay. Ideally it'd be a wide receiver, but the cost of wide receivers, and they're scheduled to bring in Gabe Davis on Thursday for a visit.
Yeah.
So they're looking at Robert Woods, Calvin Austin. This is a great segue and transition for us into Pittsburgh and their skill group as we look at cornerstones, quality starters, sufficient level starters, quality depth players, replacement level players, incomplete evaluations, rookies, non-roster caliber players. That's the buckets that we're putting these players into. At the end of this exercise, we can put numerical values to all of them and then grade the rosters effectively for power rankings for the roster. So we're starting with the skill group. And I think Pittsburgh looks at beyond DK Metcalf, and it's Robert Woods, Calvin Austin, Roman Wilson, Scotty Miller, Ben Skowronek, Rock Taylor, and then obviously Pat Freiermuth, and Darnell Washington, the ultimate Y tight end, right? Yeah. I think he caught a back shoulder ball early in the year for a touchdown last year, and that was like the only action he got really in the passing game at all.
Useful player, though, man. I think he can go a little bit more, too.
I think he can go a little bit more as like the underneath just void zone player. But even if you only got, and he's played over 500 snaps in each of his first 2 seasons, even if you only got the inline stuff as a blocker, pass
good.
protection, and you want to get 5 eligibles out into spacing. So I understand there's a conflict there. I have Darnell Washington down as an incomplete evaluation. And I have Pat Freiermuth as a quality star. That's how I grade those top 2 guys. And then they also have Connor Heyward.
Yeah,
quality depth player.
Quality starter, Freiermuth. I have a quality depth player in Darnell Washington.
Okay.
This team should probably sign Gabe Davis. Give Mason Rudolph his Marcel Aitman, you know?
Stop.
Come on, you know that, right? Come on, that sat with you in some type of way. That wasn't
They already have it in Ben Skoranek. They don't need Gabe Davis.
Gabe Davis.
Ben Skoranek has some of the best run blocking.
Right, and he can do that.
I mean, people roll their eyes at this kind of stuff, but I have quality depth for Ben Skoranek, and he's probably going to play on $1.5 million contract every year for the rest of his life because the separation stuff's not really there. But he beats the absolute snot out of DBs and linebackers and safeties in the run game, and that's a valuable player for a guy who also plays special teams.
Their ancillary blockers from their skill players are very good. And Skoranek, Darnell Washington, Connor Heyward, like they've got some really nice, and even Robert Woods can block too. I think that's definitely present here. Gabe Davis is another guy that can block. I'm not like a big Gabe Davis fan, but he can absolutely block, and he gives you like size and ball skills down the field. I think, especially on a low cost deal, it feels like a pretty useful signing. I think this would be a great spot for him. But obviously DK Metcalf, kind of the signature name here, the trade, the contract extension.
Cornerstone?
Yeah, I gave him a cornerstone label.
Me too.
Yeah, I think he's that type of mismatch player where I think Seattle had such an identity crisis throughout his entire career with them, whether it was like, hey, we're going to be a high volume passing team. No, we're best when we want to throw the football. Okay, we have other weapons. It was like, if you isolate DK Metcalf and the impact that he has on football games, I think it's cornerstone. It's not Jefferson or Chase, but it's high level.
Can I just you remember that draft class when they took those 2 offensive tackles?
Yeah, Lucas and Cross
as 2 like marquee pass protector types.
They haven't
remember us sitting in that draft room during that live show, and we're like, they must be changing some of their DNA, but like they never really did. Like they still kind of wanted to do some of the same things because Schneider was still there.
Yeah.
As far as, well, we want to be physical and run the ball up front, but we got 3 wide receivers, and we drafted a 3rd wide receiver when we had Lockett and Metcalf, and we got these pass protector offensive tackles, and
they had no clue. Will Dissly to Noah Fan. It's like, what do you want to be?
Very funny to hear you just reference that off the cuff, because I thought about that not that long ago as well. It's like, yeah, it's a good point. And I think whether it's Rodgers, Mason Rudolph, or Will Howard, think about it. Will Howard's, I think a big part of what I like Will Howard as a prospect, but a big part of the leap that he had at Ohio State this year was trusting Jeremiah Smith to make plays on the ball down the field and just letting it rip, right?
Yeah.
What has Mason Rudolph been the best at going back to Oklahoma, as we sit here and joke about Marcel Aitman, when he was throwing moon balls to Washington at Oklahoma State?
Yeah, James Washington. Maybe not a favorite name of Steelers fans, but yeah.
Some scar tissue.
That's why they brought up Aitman, man, you know?
Right. Is down the field type stuff. Aaron Rodgers, nobody loves touchdown and check down more than Aaron Rodgers these days.
It's his whole career.
We're going to get the middle of the field close safety. They're pressed up on the outside. They tap the helmet. Here we go. We just throw the 9 ball, right? Like right. DK's a good fit for all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Roman Wilson is still alive. I'd like to acknowledge that. Like, I feel like he's the most just pushed to the side player. Like, he was injured like early in camp. Then he had a hamstring. Like, it never really got going as a rookie. But
yeah,
I mean, he's a 2nd-year player that was a 3rd-round pick that I liked a lot at college. Like, I am not forgetting about him in this overall conversation as it relates to the skill players.
We would be remiss to not mention 3rd-round pick Caleb Johnson.
Yep.
Running behind, if this offensive line's healthy, could be very fun, because Johnson's not the most explosive runner, but I think he's got good vision. I think he's got good contact balance, and he executes zone style runs quite well. Arthur Smith, obviously renowned for running zone style rushing
It's a
offense.
good fit. Yep.
Jalen Warren is the third down back. I had him down as a sufficient level starter. Obviously, Caleb Johnson's an incomplete grade because he's a rookie, so we don't know what it's going to look like. And then Arthur Smith can't go anywhere without Cordell Patterson in tow. And he's a quality depth player still at this stage for a lot of the versatility that he brings and the special teams value. So I had a lot of what I felt was quality depth players that was anchored by a roster cornerstone in DK Metcalf, a quality starter at tight end in Pat Freiermuth, and then Caleb Johnson is a rookie who I really like.
Kenneth Gainwell as well. Maybe a little X factor.
KG.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, this O-line, boy, an infusion of young talent. I'm excited to talk about that and the defensive line, which is loaded. We'll get to that here on the other side of it. Folks, be sure to stick with us. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. And FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. And look, we got the NHL Stanley Cup Finals tonight, Oilers-Panthers. Get in on those points overs for Connor McDavid and Sam Reinhart. They never disappoint on that. We also have the NBA Finals starting tomorrow night. Just smash the over on SGA. That always works. And then baseball is going on right now. I've really enjoyed putting together parlays of guys that I think will get a hit that night. It's been really fun. So check it out. If you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
All right, so the offensive line in Pittsburgh has a lot of exciting young talent on it.
Yep.
When you consider Zach Frazier, who came in right off the jump, Mason McCormick looking like a small school hit for them, Broderick Jones and Troy Fautanu as first-round draft choices in back-to-back seasons. This group has had their meat and potatoes in the last couple of years of the NFL draft, and they look to be in a very good position as a result.
So much ceiling with this offensive line. So much ceiling. Frazier was terrific as a rookie. I think he's going to be a really high-end center for a long time. And like you mentioned, McCormick is a big-time hit, looking like one, small school guy. To go with Isaac Siamalu, who's like 31, but still I have him as a quality starter. It's all about these tackles, man. And I like them both. Broderick Jones maybe hasn't played his best football in 2 years. I like that he's going to get back to the left side this year. And then Fautanu, he played like 50 snaps or something like that. I know we were both big fans of him coming out. Yeah. So it's all about these tackles. They're young. They're loaded with upside. They got to go out and deliver this year. And if they do, I love this middle three in terms of what already is in place, what they've shown. These tackles do what I think they can, and I think this could be one of the better offensive lines in the league, especially when you foil that against like just the youth that exists within this group. 4 starters on rookie deals. 3 of them with multiple 2-3 years of player control or team control left. It's a good looking young offensive line.
This has a chance to look, if everybody develops the way that they want it to, this has a chance to look something similar to what Detroit's looked like for the last few years, right?
Woo!
And Taylor Decker, a high pick in Penei Sewell, who I don't think anybody has the ceiling on this group that's going to reach Penei Sewell, but then you had Ragnow as another centerpiece. And even if you had sufficient level starters at the guards, it's like it's going to grade really well, right? And then you think about Arthur Smith and that offense that he's been so known for running in a lot of his stops. It runs off of your ability to create stretch and stress on the edges. And then you have the counterpunch off of that by having guys who can kind of root you out inside, but aren't 330-pound hog mollies that can't really move. Mm-hmm. I think the DNA of all of that exists here. So can it stay healthy? Because I think that's the observation. We've talked about 1 through 8s with a lot of these teams with their offensive lines. I love the 1 through 5 in Pittsburgh. Spot 6, 7, 8 for me. I think that's where if you have to see any of these guys for an extended period, your most accomplished player is Max Sharping, who's pinballed around the league for a bunch of stops now.
And Calvin Anderson as well, who's got some run at tackle for a couple different spots. At least there's some experience there. Those would be your primary 2 backups, in my opinion. But yeah, I think the rest of it is.
You see any of those guys for an extended period, I think you're going to be in trouble in that spot. But the 1 through 5, ooh, Nelly, it's
looks strong.
Loaded.
Speaking of loaded, defensive line. Cam Heyward, ageless, man. Ageless. He's unbelievable. Keanu Benton is knocking on the door of being a quality starter. I love what I've seen from Keanu Benton as a young player. Derek Harmon, who I was a big fan of, they took him in the first round. And then, I'm not sleeping on Daniel Ekuale. I think he's kind of been a late bloomer in his career, man.
Nice player.
He's a nice depth player to go with, Isaiah Loudermilk, who they've had around for a long time, Dean Lowry, who I think has kind of been on the regression, but those 3 plus Ekuale I really like. And then on the edge, man, TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Nick Herbig. It's about as good of a 1 through 3 as you're going to find in the National Football League. And Herbig's a player. I mean, I think Watt and Highsmith kind of speak for themselves. It's Herbig's the guy that continues to get sprinkled in, continues to have high level flashes. And I think there's even more for him to showcase with the athleticism. And I mean, just a crazy dynamic athlete. So I love the makeup of this defensive line. And especially with, you have this blend of youth and Benton and Harmon. And then of course your pillars of Watt, Heyward, and Highsmith, Herbig. Yeah. And it's a good foil, man. It's a lot to love here.
Yeah. And I think Isaiah Loudermilk's turned into a pretty solid role player. And I mean, Yaya Black already played in black and yellow. It would be very unsurprising to find out that guy ends up being a Pittsburgh Steeler with his size and mass.
They kind of need that guy, right? For a lot of odd front. Benton's not a traditional
Benton can play nose, but he's not a nose in the way. He's a little bit more of when Javon Hargrave played on the nose.
Yeah. Good call. Good call. Yeah.
So I don't think it's a stretch to say this is probably the deepest front 7 in football.
Ooh.
The linebackers, Malik Harrison is a nice player that came over from Baltimore. And Cole Holcomb, obviously there's been some injury stuff recently, but Peyton Wilson looking like a home run steal is a guy who's had some medicals, and you might need one of those backup players as a result. But I'm just looking at the guys that are in the second row on the 2 deep and the entire front 7. I'm I like a lot of these guys.
I need to do the inventory. It's really good.
Well, and to be fair, we're almost halfway through. So I reserve the right to change my mind. But right now, Harmon Benton, Cam Heyward, TJ Watt, Patrick Queen, Peyton Wilson, Alex Highsmith, projected starters in your front 7 with Herbig, Holcomb, Harrison. Does the light bulb ever come on for DeMarvin Leal? Loudermilk's a role player. Black we really like as a true nose specific kind of player for them. Dean Lowry's on the 3rd column on the depth chart. And Dean Lowry now is not Dean Lowry in 2019, 2020, who I thought was a sufficient level starter and a nice player. But man, they just have a lot. They got a lot of bodies that I think any team that's looking for the waiver wire, when you get down the cuts, I'd be looking to see who doesn't make it in Pittsburgh, because they'd probably have room on my team.
Why do the Pittsburgh Steelers win 9-10 games every year, go to the playoffs despite not having quarterback play? It's these guys right here.
Well, and you know what's funny? Real quick, I know we got to get the break. When Pittsburgh made their big hire and hired Andy Weidel to be the assistant GM for Philadelphia, their entire focus when they did that was to rebuild the offensive and defensive lines.
Oh, well done. I didn't realize that.
And so Pittsburgh has a story that was posted August of 2024 When the Steelers hired Weidl away from Philadelphia as their assistant GM, the idea that he and his scouts might help the team quickly rebuild their offensive and defensive lines. Look at the work that they've done since, 23?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I didn't realize that.
It
That's really good.
Broderick Jones, Zach Frazier, Mason McCormick, Troy Fautanu, Derek Harmon, Keanu Benton.
Yeah, not even like super high picks, right? Like
Nick Herbig.
They let it come to them.
Yeah, they didn't force it.
Yeah, it's really good.
I mean, they've got a really strong DNA, and Andy Weidl, I still got that gold star there for when the time comes and your team needs a GM. If you want to prioritize trench play, there's really nice body of work here in Pittsburgh after a really nice body of work in Philadelphia.
No free pub, but for Mr. Weidl, gets a big shout out here.
That's right.
All right, back seven defense. We'll explore that here on the other side of it, folks. Be sure to stick with us.
Is there a more overlooked reworking than what Pittsburgh did in their secondary with Darius Slay, Juan Thornhill being added to the foundation that they already had? And obviously UDFA Beanie Bishop, the Steelers fans couldn't shout his name from a high enough rooftop to us when it was very apparent early last year that they felt they had a hit there. And then Joey Porter, Minka Fitzpatrick, and Deshaun Elliott, like adding those guys to that pre-existing nucleus feels like, and they're both later chapter players. I don't think either of them are on the upswing anymore in their careers, but those are now complementing what your foundation was in the secondary already. You got to feel pretty good if you're Pittsburgh.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously to me, the focal point here is Joey Porter Jr. And one thing I really respect about him, he's one of the few corners in the league that travels, right? Like he gets matched up against the other team's best receiver, plays both sides. And, there's even in this division, that's a big draw, and that you're going to get Chase, knowing that you're going to get Zay Flowers, you're going to get Jerry Jeudy, now a 1,200-yard receiver. I respect that a lot about Joey Porter. And I think that says a lot about him and his skill set. And I think it helps, obviously, playing behind this front. But to me, he's one of the budding star corners in the league, especially when you factor in like the curve for the matchups that he draws. And now you have Darius Slay in the mix. Who is, I mean, we're probably on the Stephon Gilmore 1 year at a time plan the rest of the way for Darius Slay. And one thing that, as I thought about Darius Slay and his availability in free agency, I thought to myself, well, he's getting a little bit late in his career. He didn't have any interceptions. Like interceptions have kind of been his calling card. He hasn't had as many recently. And I thought to myself, I wonder how much he benefits from playing behind that Eagles front. Well, we're here in Pittsburgh, and he's going to have a lot of hurried throws, I would assume, here in this spot. And I think that's a really good running mate for Joey Porter at this point. And then you mentioned Beanie Bishop. I am curious to see how Juan Thornhill plays in here. You think they're going to play a lot of three safeties? Because I feel like it's going to be Elliott and Fitzpatrick that claim the snaps. Is this okay? We know that we can play deep alignments with Thornhill and Elliott and free up Fitzpatrick to play a little bit more in a freelance role. I'm curious.
It feels like they've always been trying to find that right balance for Minka, right?
Yeah, at KZ last year in a maybe similar role to Thornhill this year.
It's like he wants to be around the ball, but he wants to hunt the ball. He then wants to be up near the line of scrimmage. And I think a player like that, it just kind of benefits you. And even Miles Killebrew is the special teams guy, bumping him down into the fourth safety spot. Like, I think they're pretty well protected if they get interruptions. And Thornhill can play high. I think Killebrew can do some of the Deshaun Elliott lower type stuff. But I think it would be really interesting to see, depending on your matchups and maybe a team like Baltimore, who still runs. Baltimore's 12 personnel had the highest DPA of any team's 12 personnel last 2
problem. It's an absolute problem. Yeah.
So what's your answer for that if you're Pittsburgh, and is Beanie Bishop a part of the solution, or does it become Minka moving around more to play coverage against Isaiah Likely potentially, and then you need Juan Thornhill for those matchups against Baltimore?
One observation that I had about Pittsburgh in general when studying them is this is a team that defensively, it looks like there were some deliberate moves to pay for depth. They signed some guys that are not going to start for them to not nothing deals. One of them being Juan Thornhill. One of them being Malik Harrison. Was that a 2-year, $10 million deal? Yeah. Brandon Eccles on a 1-year, $3 million deal. Daniel Aquale on a decent, like it was a 1-year, maybe $3 million. This team very deliberately went out and found experienced depth for their defense. And it's undeniable to me that that was intentional.
Yeah. As far as categorization, let's finish with off-ball. I think we haven't really touched off-ball linebacker other than mentioning Malik Harrison twice. And I think Holcomb got a quick shout. Yeah. Starters, Peyton Wilson and Patrick Queen. Peyton Wilson was everything you thought he was on tape once he got on the field, right? And it was there's a durability concern that exists there. But Wilson as the running mate with Queen, how'd you stack up Patrick Queen? Obviously, we now had a chance to see him as not in Baltimore and playing with Roquan Smith, and now he's the guy in Pittsburgh. And how'd you think that process went last year? Because I had some thoughts, but I'd love to hear from you on what you thought.
I reluctantly gave Patrick Queen the quality starter grade. I don't think it was his best football. I think it was a step down from what he showed us within the confines of what he did in Baltimore. I still think there's higher levels for him to play to, and I'm kind of leaning into that with my quality starter grade. And they played he had a lot of different partners on the second level as well. You know, you saw different bodies next to him. And I think as you're more repped with players, like you're going to be able to play off of each other better. And so I'm hoping that he'll be kind of more back to the Ravens version of Queen this year.
Yeah. And I think the thing that encouraged me the most that we will have the chance to see that is the guys that you have when you get into obvious situations or when you're playing your even front stuff and you don't necessarily the skill sets of the rest of the linebackers. You've got another guy that can scrape and fly with you, and then you've got guys that can get downhill and plug and not ask Queen to ever have to be that player. Right? Like Malik Harrison, Cole Holcomb will be the plug guy who triggers and allow Queen to scrape if you get into personnel groupings in which that's how you're fitting the run and operating versus when you want to play a nickel and protect yourself in the middle of the field, that's where Peyton Wilson and Patrick Queen can play off each other quite well. And I think that will allow Patrick Queen to not be a player that is asked to do the things that don't make Patrick Queen.
Yeah. That's a good take. I think you're a little higher on Harrison than me. I think for this role though, right? Like there's a downhill early, if you want an early down plug, I think he can help you in that capacity. I wonder how they, and Holcomb missed all of last year, right?
Yes.
I am interested to see how the snaps play out because I'd want Wilson and Queen on the field the most. But you do want to have Harrison situationally, and then is there room for 4 meaningful off-ball linebackers if everyone's healthy? Holcomb's a nice hedge because of I think there are injury concerns that do exist with Wilson.
Right. So I think, and Harrison's a nice hedge for Holcomb in his return from injury as well.
Yeah.
So I think that they're pretty well protected. We'll see how the 53 shakes out. But I agree with you. When you're in base nickel, if you're going to play base nickel, it should be Queen and Wilson on the field. But when a team comes out in 12 personnel and forces you to go base defense, that's where I'd maybe pull Peyton Wilson off still.
Yeah. This looks like a defense built to handle the problems of Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say that.
Yeah. And as a result, they're a team that's probably going to win at least 9-10 games again. Have you looked at their schedule?
Not for a second. Yeah, let's do that real quick.
All right.
Well, and how much does the quarterback lens? Like, Which quarterback gets you the most excited? Rodgers, Rudolph, or Cousins? It's Cousins for me. That would be the one that gave me the most excited.
It's Kirk because he's an upgrade, but he doesn't come with the extra stuff that Aaron's already subjected you to before he's even signed a contract.
Yeah. I might want Mason Rudolph over Aaron Rodgers.
I think Aaron's the worst thing that they could do because it's going to cost them more money, and then it's going to only further perpetuate the cycle that they've been in.
Yeah, I agree.
I'll tell you what, though, Aaron gets the chance to really stick the knife in and twist it here. Week 1 at New York Jets.
It's a hell of a draw. You know what's Fields back against Pittsburgh. That's that's a hard game though. When I was doing my schedule wish list for the Bills, I said I don't want the Jets early.
Or mystery team early, right?
Especially with a quarterback with like Fields.
Yeah.
Get a little tape on those guys, you know?
Yeah. When do you get them first, the Jets?
Great question. I couldn't tell you.
We got them home week 4, Monday Night Football. That's probably going to be the Nike uniform game for the Dolphins.
Week 2, Kyle Krabs.
You got them early.
Week 2. At least it's not their home opener. They open at home at the Steelers. And
then the Steelers also play the Packers on Sunday Night Football week 8. So Aaron can get both teams.
Oh, wow. The NFL is actively rooting for this, boy. You know that.
Yeah, they put the Jets week 1 and then the Packers on Sunday Night Football. Yeah, they definitely didn't have that in their back mind. At Jets, home against Seattle. So West Coast team coming east with a new quarterback. At New England, Minnesota International, first 4 games for Pittsburgh. Then they have their bye. Home against the Browns. At Cincinnati. Home against the Packers. Home against the Colts. West Coast trip, Sunday Night Football against the Chargers. Home against the Bengals. At Chicago. Home against Buffalo. At Baltimore. Home Monday Night Football against the Dolphins. At Detroit. At Cleveland. Baltimore week 18.
I mean, your division schedule is tough. Then you draw Buffalo and Detroit. That doesn't do Buffalo, Detroit, Green Bay. You play the NFC North
and Minnesota. Yeah.
Gosh, I would say
I see 9 right now. 8 or 9 right now with Mason Rudolph.
10 or 11 with Kirk.
Yeah, I think so.
Makes sense. And then the most likely outcome, it feels like Rodgers, and it's the one we don't really want to acknowledge.
Yeah, it's just they're human beings, right? They're not just football players. There's a lot with Aaron, and he's already doing it to him, and it's June 4th.
I imagine a lot of Pittsburgh Steelers fans are not eager to jump into that ship, man.
Ship with a P, right?
Yeah, of course. There's no doubt I said ship.
Thank you.
P as in Pittsburgh.
P as in Pittsburgh. We are out of here, Kyle Krabs. Joe Marino, appreciate you guys as always for checking out Locked On NFL Scouting. We got the Ravens tomorrow. Takes on Friday. Hope you come back and see us. We'll talk to you all again soon.